Welcome back to another episode of Decoded. My name is Jesse and I'm the writer, director, and narrator for the Lost Codex episodes, and as usual, I am here alone on episode 31 of Decoded. What a milestone. And you know what? I didn't want to go start off big and strong on episode 31. I know you guys are probably wondering, where are the lore podcasts? Where are the lore videos? Those are coming. Those are actually in the works right now. And I haven't really talked about anything in particular to the lore in the last couple of podcasts, aside from last week when we talked about 8.1. But I wanted to kind of just reflect on a little bit of some of my favorite moments over the last couple of expansions, because I feel with so much hate going on right now and so much negativity, I think it's safe to just talk about something good. Maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much about this, but with so much toxicity going on in the community right now, and nothing wrong with negativity, it's the incoherent toxicity it is the age of weaponized misinformation. It's the word I'm going to keep using, weaponized misinformation, where it is just a solid hate on everything. No matter what happens, hate will always follow. That's what this kind of year has been, and not just for Blizzard. You know, whether you can argue that they deserve some of this hate or not, it happens with a lot of game companies, a lot of just everything across the board. So let's focus on something positive. And at the end of the podcast, I want to bring up a conversation that two of my stream viewers last night. We had a little cozy stream last night, and someone brought up negativity, and of course that sparked a conversation. And two people in particular said something that really struck home. So if you're listening to this and you want to hear my thoughts on the negativity, again, why? I've said a lot of it. But if you want to, go towards the end of the podcast, and I'm gonna propose a question for you guys that I would like you to answer in the comments, and keep it civil. I hate that I have to say that, but let's just dive into this. This is going to be a very short podcast for those of you who are getting ready to sit down for a good hour and 45 minutes. I won't be here that long. It's going to be a little bit of a ramble cast today, and yeah, we're gonna get started here. I want to talk about my favorite moments in the past, and not necessarily favorite lore moments, but just I spent the last couple hours thinking about what did I like about every single one of these expansions. Move my microphone a little bit closer here. Apologize for the mic sound. And let's start with vanilla, and this isn't a classic conversation. I think everyone's favorite moment of vanilla, if you played vanilla back in the day, most people will say it's the same thing. And for me, or for a lot of people, I think it's that open, new, wondrous world. We ran around Azeroth as Arthas and Jaina and Thrall in Warcraft 3 and the prior games, but being able to explore Azeroth and these iconic places that we have only read about or traveled through on an RTS, being able to go there was, to me, mind-blowing. And as someone who didn't understand the lore back then, I was in awe. I remember running around. My first ever character, was a my dwarf hunter. He's still level 5. I still have him. I got him to level 5. Never played him again. He's actually I haven't touched him. I logged into him shortly after the Cataclysm, and the items he was wearing on his hands, the gloves that he got in vanilla, their item changed in Cataclysm. The model changed, and so they changed on his character. I remember scrolling through the character list, and I was like, those are brand new gloves. And the dude got upgrades, and I didn't even play him. But I remember running around Azeroth for the first time, running up to the gates of Ironforge, and disconnecting because Ironforge leg was awful. No, but seriously, running up to the gates of Ironforge, the gates weren't bad. It was inside that was horrible. And seeing, having that Lord of the Rings feeling of, oh my God, this is a can I go in there, or is it going to stop me? Is it going to be like a load? I didn't know how World of Warcraft worked. So I thought, a loading screen, there's going to be a gate, and I saw the doors open. And when I was finally able to make it past the lag, because Ironforge was the bump and hotspot of the Alliance way back, I pretty sure I spent the next 4 WoW sessions running around Ironforge, just exploring, just looking in buildings and thinking, wow, like, I can't go in those buildings, can I? And you could go in those buildings, and, meeting the king of the dwarves back in the day. I never thought to ever roll, the opposite faction until a couple months later. I was like, there's a whole other side I haven't seen. So I hopped over and I made a horde character on a different realm. And when I ran in there into Orgrimmar for the first time, I thought, I didn't realize every race had its own capital city. Every race, and I still did not realize the scale of the world until 4 or 5 months in, because I was only focused on the zones that I was exploring. And all through, vanilla, I went through several guilds, and finally I found my home guild, and it was funny because my friend used to raid Molten Core on his mage, but sometimes he was too lazy to actually go in there and raid, so I would go on his mage and raid for him. I'd be at his house, we'd both be sitting in his basement kind of thing, and the big joke was that I didn't have my own max level character, but they knew me as my character name, but I didn't actually have my max level character, Radjit, my gnome warlock. And so when I finally hit level 60, it was a huge moment, mostly for the guild, not even for me. It was more, I remember it was in the Plaguelands. And I did say this wasn't a classic conversation, but I'll bring up classic. I guess I'm eager to see if that level of nostalgia hits me of, oh my god, I remember this. So vanilla for me was that new open exploration, that world, that just awe-inspiring feeling of, holy crap, this isn't just one little zone, one little area. When I realized you could zoom out on the map and then click another, you couldn't see the maps, the art of the map because you had to explore it, but I remember thinking, like, are these grayed out because I can't go there, or is it grayed out because I can't explore it? God, Noob Jesse was awful back then. So that was my favorite moment. There wasn't a lot of lore in Vanilla WoW. There were some fun stories, and I still remember fondly my Warlock Epic Mount questline. And my friend had all the bits and pieces you didn't need to have. The Warlocks could do it without actually buying all the pieces, as long as another Warlock had. There were certain things you had to buy, and certain things you didn't have to buy. And I may have cheated. Cheated within the game limitations. A Warlock friend of mine basically had all the remaining components, and I only had to spend X amount of gold instead of, triple the cost. And I remember that epic feeling of getting all of my mounts, getting all of my Warlock demons first, and then ending with this epic Dreadsteed. And it was just, I remember being in running around Ironforge for the first time on this Dreadsteed, thinking, and I remember people like clicking on me and running around, and little warlocks running up, and it felt just this epic feeling. And then of course they announced Burning Crusade and that you can go fly, and I thought, oh great, no, I'm never going to use this horse because flying sounds super cool. So let's dive right into Burning Crusade. My favorite moment of Burning Crusade was easily raiding Karazhan with the same guild, diving into Karazhan and just exploring the hidden secrets of this scary big castle. Of course, I didn't know the lore back then either. I knew who Illidan was. I did know what Karazhan was. But the sheer scale of it and the sheer size of it stands out in my mind. And that's actually something that I've been sort of missing over the last more recent years of WoW, is that sort of home feeling of a guild, having that family-oriented sensation of hopping into Vent. And I remember I remember changing servers the end of BC, and so all my real life friends played. All my real life friends played on a PvP server. I did not. Played on a PvE server. Paranoid represent back in the day, and all my friends played on a PvP server except me and one of my friends. And his whole family, his dad, his brother, they all played on the PvP server as well. It was just me and him on this PvE server, everyone else in PvP. And finally he said, let's move to the PvP server. My dad's going to pay for both our character transfers. And I went, all right, let's go play with our real life friends. And I remember leaving the guild. I remember leaving my guild at the end of BC. And I had people messaging me. They were, because there was no BattleNet back then. There was no BattleNet. There, you know, social media wasn't a big thing back then. So it was this really, it was sad. And I remember some of my friends I used to play with with this hunter. It was my friend who was a mage. I was on my warlock, and he was on his hunter. And we used to run around the zones together, run around farming things and for professions and getting ready for the raid. And that wasn't going to happen anymore. And to me, it was a real sobering thought of, I've made friends online. I've made friends in this online fictional world. And I didn't realize how big that would get. I'm building to this. There's a reason I'm building to that. BC lore was awful. But it was so fun. Karazhan, running into Tempest Keep and Serpentine Cavern, and, you know, only seeing the first boss because that was doable. The rest were awful, and at least for my guild. Black Temple, didn't really see much current content, and no one saw Sunwell back in the day. Obviously people did see Sunwell, but, you know, it was one of those, if you did Sunwell, you were god tier. Wrath of the Lich King comes out. And even though BC, when you got to BC, it was kind of an alien world, for me, BC was... It felt like a new land, but I wasn't in awe. Like, it was cool. It was space. I was like, this is funky. I like it. But going into Northrend was a familiar journey in an unfamiliar place. Or maybe the other way around. An unfamiliar journey in a familiar place. I knew Northrend. I knew that big moments in lore happened here. I knew it has always been on Azeroth, and that technically, you know, we could have always gone there, kind of thing. And I remember running around, you know, that first boat ride as Alliance when you come into the Howling Fjord, and that soundtrack starts playing. Ooh, that soundtrack is... Ugh, it sends chills just thinking about it. I actually leveled in Borean Tundra first. I went to Howling Fjord, but then I was like, nope. I went to Borean Tundra. And in Borean Tundra, I remember just this... I think it might have been just the skybox feeling of it. Feeling like I was back on Azeroth after spending so many years in Outland, fighting demons and Illidan and Blood Elves, and that's it. I remember, you know, running around Borean Tundra thinking to myself, I'm back. I'm back home. I'm back on Azeroth. Not that I left or it felt that I was out of place in Burning Crusade, but it was that familiar place, even though I've never been there before. And of course, the progression through the zones, carrying into the next zone, you know, the level of storytelling really started to pick up in Wrath. The zone lore made a little bit more sense, and they weren't super disorganized. It was the start of something good. Of course, we all get to Dragonblight, and we do the big Dragonblight quest line, and go over to the western part of Dragonblight, and, you know, we're told we're going to go defend the Wrathgate, and bam, the cinematic starts playing. Oh, whoa, what's this? What is happening? What's going on? And oh my god! And the Wrathgate event happens, and I remember sitting there in complete shock on Vent. And they were talking. I think I was in a dungeon queue. I don't know. I missed the queue because I was just staring, stunned. And then I said, no, screw the dungeon. Even though I missed the queue, it was already over. But I want to know what happened next. I thought, oh my god, so Sylvanas did this? No, Lich King. Who is that guy? And I knew who that guy was. I knew who Putress was because I had done the pre-event for from BC to Wrath with all the plague, and I remember seeing his outfit, and he's wearing the Ulduar tier gear, but it was pre-Wrath. So we saw his armor early on, but we didn't get it till much later. And I remember thinking, like, bro, you have a cool set of armor. I want your armor. And I remember talking to him and thinking, this guy, who is this guy? This guy kind of came out of nowhere. So seeing him in the cinematic, I was like, oh, you dick. Going to the Wrathgate, going to the Undercities, witnessing all that stuff. And I remember thinking, what is happening? Like the faction war had always been there, but it hadn't been, right? There wasn't a lot of faction war stuff in BC or vanilla, aside from like the battlegrounds, obviously, but there was no big epic moments in the lore that referred to, these big, the drums of war sound once again, the narrator speaking for the original Warcraft. So suddenly it was like, oh my god, the story is, are we officially going to war now? Is this it?